Let's have a bit of a look at the history now, shall we? We'll look at how we got here, the policy choices that were not inevitabilities. This wasn't fate, it was a string of political decisions with price tags. Years of underinvestment in decision-making created long waits for asylum applicants, which then fed into hotel placements as a stopgap. The National Audit Office has described a Home Office that repeatedly rushed into emergency procurement, paying premium prices for temporary accommodation rather than building steady processing capacity and a sustainable housing supply. The end of the EU's Dublin return system fundamentally shifted the burden. Previously, the UK could return claimants to the first safe EU country they entered, reducing domestic pressure. Losing this route forced ministers to rely on bilateral agreements which are slower, narrower in scope, and politically fragile. The change wasn't inevitable. It was a consequence of Brexit policy choices combined with insufficient planning for alternative return mechanisms. Enforced returns fell sharply in the late 2010s and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Although numbers recovered to 34,000 removals in 2024, this remains below levels seen a decade ago, with enforced removals consistently a small fraction of overall claims. Political and operational choices, prioritizing emergency hotels and under-resourcing returns teams, contributed directly to the backlog and the perception of policy failure. In an attempt to accelerate housing, ministers sought to stretch emergency powers, such as special development orders, to push through large accommodation sites. Councils challenged these moves in court, with mixed results, generating delays, legal costs, and further political tension. Far from being inevitable, the disputes were the logical outcome of decisions to prioritize speed over sustainable planning. Each long wait, each expensive hotel night, each court challenge traces back to concrete choices made by ministers, not an unavoidable crisis. The price tag is financial, social, and political, and it could have been managed differently. So follow the money and the theory. What do different economists say? You can pay Marriott prices forever, or pay civil service salaries for 6 months. The numbers are brutal, and economic theory provides a lens for understanding why. So Keynesian, or common sense public management, suggests that the solution is straightforward. Invest upfront in caseworkers, judges, and permanent housing stock. Faster processing reduces hotel nights, lowers per person costs, and frees up administrative capacity. The NAO's data illustrates the fiscal logic. Paying £127 to £148 per person per night in hotels is an own goal compared with expanding processes and ordinary housing. In other words, a little investment early could have collapsed the backlog and cut the runaway cost curve. Instead, back in the 2010s, the Tories and Liberal Democrats cut funding. Right, modern monetary theory highlights that a currency issuing government like the UK can fund the real resources it needs, staff, housing, infrastructure, without hitting a financial ceiling. The constraint is real capacity, not spreadsheets. Delays in hiring decision makers or building accommodation aren't free. They cost more in prolonged hotel stays than they would in salaries or capital investment. The National Audit Office and Inspectorate reports implicitly confirm this, showing that emergency measures repeatedly overshot costs while failing to clear the backlog. So Tory, and now Labour, attempts to put a sticking plaster over this metaphorical wound have only made it worse. Monetarist or deterrence view. From this angle, the strategy is to make the UK unattractive to potential arrivals. Swift removals, robust returns agreements, and minimal financial support. There is some evidence of effect. Albanian small boat arrivals collapsed after the 2022 returns deal. But deterrence alone cannot empty hotels if the processing system and housing supply remain jammed. Policy must couple deterrence with capacity building to be effective. And now the neoliberal or outsourcing critique. Neoliberal critique focuses on reliance on private hotel chains and emergency contractors, which entrenches high, inflexible costs and weak accountability. Parliament's Home Affairs Committee and National Audit Office reports show that over 10 years, accommodation contracts ballooned to £15.3 billion, with hotels accounting for 76% of costs, but housing only 35% of people in 24-25. The outcome is predictable. Public money spent inefficiently while the system remains clogged. Economics tells the same story from multiple angles. You either invest in processing and housing up front, or you keep paying premium hotel prices indefinitely. Delay is expensive, both financially and politically. So, if your bath is overflowing, do you spend 2 years arguing about the plug, or turn off the tap and get a better drain? The UK's asylum challenges become clearer when compared with the actions of other countries that have managed similar pressures. Continental models like Germany, France, Spain, and Sweden all rely on a mix of reception centres and decentralised housing, but the key is predictable throughput. Front-loaded processing, rapid initial interviews, clear eligibility checks, and defined exit paths ensures that applicants either move into permanent accommodation or leave the system efficiently. By contrast, the UK has repeatedly attempted to short-circuit this model with barges, temporary megabases, and contingency hotels. The National Audit Office and Inspectorate evidence suggests these interventions do not reduce costs, but instead inflame local politics and provoke legal challenges. The lesson is clear. Speed without systemic capacity creates more chaos than it solves. A more focused approach can work in narrow contexts. The UK's returns agreement with Albania, which lasted from 2022 to 24, demonstrates that targeted deals can shift behaviour and arrivals for specific nationalities. Small boat crossings from Albania dipped significantly after enforcement was coupled with swift removals. But the effect was limited. Other nationalities were unaffected, highlighting that bilateral deals are a marginal solution, not a substitute for broader processing and housing capacity. International experience and domestic precedent converge on the same point. Predictable throughput, front-loaded processing, and clear exit mechanisms matter far more than emergency stopgaps. Barges, hotels, and megabases may make headlines, but they do little to improve efficiency or reduce costs if the underlying system remains overloaded.
I've been Mike Sivia of Vox Political, and if you found this useful, or if you believe in independent political journalism, help me keep it going. Donate £20 or more, and I'll send you a copy of my book, Strong Words in Hard Times. Links below. Thank you for watching, and you'll see me in the next one.